I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And JT, what's your name for today? He doesn't have a microphone today. What's your name today?
Stress.
JT is stressed.
Pure stress.
That is his. JT always picks a name for these episodes, and it's never JT. It's always like.
It's rarely JT.
Yeah, it's like.
Occasionally it's JT.
Yeah, or lounge boy.
Yeah,
if you will.
You're doing great, JT. Doing great.
Bert said that you're doing great, JT.
Thank you.
And that voice that you just heard, that is Bert with Ghost Notes Paranormal. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm such a fan of what y'all do. So keep doing what you're doing.
We appreciate it. Yeah, this has been a long time coming, y'all, because ever since we started our TikTok, I want to say, Bert, you were like one of the first people with like a following that actually followed us, and we were honored. We were like,
I think you were the first person to ever stitch us.
Yeah.
So it was like,
oh really?
Someone's paying attention.
I remember doing that stitch too. I was in Taos, New Mexico.
It was the mirror when we were talking about mirrors, right?
The one that broke the internet. Everybody lost their minds over that story.
Seriously. I noticed.
Yeah,
that's the danger of presenting anything on the internet, is how quickly people set up camp and set up their little war councils as to whether or not they support or want to take you down. And so it's just a fascinating thing, because it's like we are very steadfast on the idea that we want to support absolutely everybody who has these experiences, and we can't waste time on like debunking or questioning or second guessing, because everybody's experience is so personal and so to them. So whatever they're sharing is oftentimes filtered through their experience, or the fact that they're taking the chance at all to share it's a huge thing, because we're raised to not share. We're raised to be like, okay, this was weird, and if I tell people, they'll think I'm crazy, so I need to, button my lip. So it was really great to find, like-minded people out there, fighting the good fight for, the experience of the paranormal. Yeah.
And like you said, it just like you can't like dismiss anybody's experiences because you weren't there. It's just all about like taking it in and trying to make people believe more about it, I think. And like, I don't know, just have an honest approach, and I don't know, it just matters. So
I completely agree.
So
it's true. Okay. So my first question I have for you, we always say, Chris coined this term, which is why we started calling the fans that are on Patreon Parajunkies, that when you have your first paranormal encounter, it's like your first dose of ghost heroin. And you just constantly are looking for the next one.
Yeah.
And so that was going to be my question for you. What was your ghost heroin moment? What got you into the paranormal?
Oh, well, it honestly happened when I was like super young, like about 11 years old. And like, this wasn't like investigating, like, but this started my belief in it, and like, I was just coming down my stairs, and look, I lived in a historic home. I didn't even know that at the time. But as I got older, I found out the house was actually historic. And so I was coming down the stairs, and like right at the bottom of the stairs, I'm still on the stairs, but right at the bottom of the stairs, there was a figure of this woman in like a white dress, not looking at me, but she was looking at technically this closet that was at the bottom of the stairs. So it was kind of weird to me. I'm like, I don't know. And I, blinked, and she was gone, kind of thing. but I was like stuck in place. I was just frozen, and I couldn't believe what I just saw, kind of thing. Uh, but other than that, that was the first time I ever saw like a figure, and really haven't really seen too many since. But that made me believe like, okay, there is stuff there. There's stuff that we're probably missing all the time, but I somehow tuned into that one at the same, like at that moment, was able to see her. So it felt like really cool to like just know that there was something else constantly all around us, that energy and whatever it is, like other universe or parallel, so it's like there's so many other theories about what the paranormal could be. And that's kind of what's like me to get more into it. Like when I got older and started like dabbling around with it, like history alone um became such a big thing. And then like once that became a big thing, it connected the paranormal in such a way to me that it was just like, this is amazing. Like actually history is nuts. Like there's so much crazy history out there. And I guess I hated it because my high school teachers were just terrible and very boring. And so I never got
Sure.
into it. But then finding that person that like actually makes it interesting and you start learning more about it and then connecting it to these like historic hauntings all over the like US and all over the world, eventually I started looking into. And it just seemed like they go hand in hand. And that just like intrigued the hell out of me. And so I started getting all the gadgets, started watching all like Ghost Adventures and all that, and just finding more and more like reasons to put myself out there and like find out more about it myself. Because like, of course, you can see something and like judge it from a distance and not know much about it. But when you start dabbling in something and start learning more about it, it's like you can find out if it's true or false, like I don't see why other people wouldn't want to get into this. So
I completely agree. It's like my experience was a little bit different. I didn't get the option out of not being interested in the paranormal. Well, I mean, I guess I could have. I could have just ignored it, but
yeah.
because I see spirits so often, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to just learn everything about it that I can learn.
Hmm.
Which I mean, I don't think anybody will ever fully know everything about paranormal. I don't think that's even humanly possible.
Right.
But at least it's like, well, I could do this all my life and I can, just gather all this information. So I completely
Hmm.
understand. And I'm a history nerd too, so that's always really fun to
Nice.
kind of, yeah, it's fun because it's like you get to link these things together, but also going to these supposedly haunted locations that are historical as well. It hits different when you know the actual story behind them, besides just like, oh, I hope I see a bloody soldier, or I hope
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's
it's so
like
important.
it is. It's very important to know, and I'm sure a lot of ghost people feel that way, where they like the history too. You know,
Hmm.
now, with your historic home, did you, after that experience, go and start researching the property, or how
I,
did you
I
find
have
out?
not. Yeah,
Oh,
the
really?
building's still there. I have not like looked into like what it was, but that was in Michigan. So it's like I started dabbling after I came to Texas. But now that you mention it, I'm like, why haven't I done that? That sounds really awesome, actually. Um,
We get a
and
lot of
I don't
ghost
know.
stories from Michigan, actually. Michigan
Mhm,
is a
Yeah,
is a pretty woefully haunted area too.
mhm.
yeah, and like I'm kind of upset that I didn't get into it more up there because there's like shipwrecks in Lake Michigan and all that stuff.
Right.
So cool. I love it.
So, since you said that you really started dabbling into it into when you moved to Texas, what was the first Texas paranormal site that you went to?
That's actually it was like you know, after we were watching like Ghost Adventures and stuff. So it's like I already kind of had a camera, and so I was like, you know what, let's document this. And it was at this really old haunted bar called the Tavern here in Austin, Texas. And it was like the whole history thing is like it was a brothel, of course. It was like the bottom level was a general store and the top was a brothel and that kind of history to it. And it gets really dark because there was a guy that like went there back in the day. His name was Walter, and he fell in love with um, this little girl's mother. Her name is Emily, and they're more of the two spirits that are there. But it's like a really sad story because supposedly the mother didn't want to leave. Well, hold on, let me start again. So uh, the mother was working there, of course, and the kid would stay there, like stay up in the attic. That was more because it was kind of away from everything. And so this man, Walter, ended up falling in love with her mother and wanting to take her for himself. And she was like, I got to bring my kid with me. If not, you can't have me. And of course, he didn't want that. He wanted her all to himself. So the whole story goes that he murdered the child and put her in the walls. And they actually found little shoes in the walls of the store or of this. Now it's a bar, but those shoes are actually encased in like a viewing case, so you can actually see them in the bar, and they're Emily's shoes. So I believe he killed the mother as well, of course, because he killed the daughter. But their three spirits are supposedly still there. Emily is the little girl. She's a very vocal, and like you can hear that little child's voice once you start like investigating. And Walter is more of like the darker side. It's like there's supposedly a dark and a light side to this place, and there's been psychics there and whatnot. So we were just like, okay, let's go check out this place. And kind of rogue investigation, like didn't get anybody's approval or anything. Just brought these cameras in there, got a drink from the bar, and turned on our spirit box. And we actually started getting the responses through it. It's all on YouTube still. And let's see. It's kind of like I'm kind of figuring that Walter maybe had like an attachment or maybe something dark that made him want to do that. And I feel like Walter's spirit is there, and then whatever was attached to Walter is still there. So you get like an angry man, like kind of older voice coming through the spirit box sometimes, and then you get like this angry, like growly kind of voice. And it like was so constant, and I'm saying it's constant because eventually this place became like a spot that I investigated over and over and over again with like paranormal tours that I used to put on. So it was kind of my starting place, and like actually started to like get really into it and actually do more thorough investigations and hearing the same voices over and over. And it was just wild being able to like go back there and spend time with these spirits with different people too, like bringing different people to these investigations. It's a different energy like every time. So
I mean, that sounds insane. And Walter, this one is for you. That is for you, Walter.
Yes.
And the shoes in the wall.
You do not win the heart of a woman by killing their child. This is
that's what it's like.
Just to go out there, unsolicited advice to all you romantics out there. You're not going to win them over by killing their kids.
Yeah, and it's like, man, that's why I think it's like something had to come over him, and he just
had to
snapped or something. But the fact they found those shoes in the walls, like,
yeah, that's especially just, and to have them on display must also create a never-ending loop of energy, because people are looking at it, thinking about the story, reinforcing the presence. There's so many things that go into hauntings that people don't really think about, because one of the things that we talk about is kind of like the way certain energies utilize our expectations to create their presence. Sometimes you will see, let's say you see Emily, but sometimes it's just energy that is utilizing your expectations to form itself, to give itself shape, to give itself, because a lot of times you're not dealing necessarily, sometimes you are, sometimes you're not, but you're not always dealing with the spirit you think you are, because there's so much layered story lore that helps wayward energy, coalesce, become something solid.
Yeah.
I find it endlessly interesting. I also find it interesting because it's something hard to explain. You have to use the spirit box a lot to get used to this notion that you're not just hearing like snippets of songs and DJ speaking, but after a while you start to hear a very clear voice. You hear a voice that isn't a DJ. It isn't happening because you keep passing over the same area. It happens throughout the scanning. And you
Yeah.
start to recognize the voice itself. You start to say, oh, you know what? I recognize that voice. I've heard that voice earlier this evening, or, it's really coming through. And I think it takes time to attune your ears to it. It takes time
Mhm.
to attune yourself to what's happening with a spirit box, because it's an easy explanation to say it's taking snippets up and down the dial. But if you've
Right.
ever been in those situations where you have the spirit box and something is really like pulling sentences together and throwing out words that seem very much a response element, you're like, oh, you know what? This isn't just um, fragments being pieced together. It is something about this sweeping of the frequencies and this searching through the ether for sound that
Mhm.
brings about these things. And since we're talking about spirit box, let's get a rundown of the equipment that you use when you do your paranormal investigations. If you want to just kind of give us a cursory look at your ghost hunting kit.
Yeah, actually, like we were talking about, the Spirit Chat version 4 is my newest device that I just got.
And I'll go ahead and put this out there for anybody who's been following us these last couple of weeks, and we have used the Spirit Chat 4. This is the man who brought it to my attention, and I went out and bought it because I had watched very compelling video about it. And one of the things that I love about the Spirit Box is it has no frills. It's not outfitted with GPS or microphones or anything that would normally lead people to suspect that some kind of AI system is at work
Right.
within it. It is a word bank with electromagnetic uh, sensors, so
Mhm.
that alters how you perceive how it's working. And we had some amazing luck with it. But I'm sorry, continue.
No, I was gonna say that thing has done me well. Like, I'm hoping you guys will see it sooner or later. The documentary I've been only using it so far at this one location, and I've been lucky enough to go back and be able to have like all access to it. Um, but that device has been probably my favorite device that I've used there so far. Like, and I've used, you know, and I could get back to the rundown. Got the SLS camera. The structured light system is what SLS stands for. So a lot of folks, have the phone apps that kind of do the same thing. But this actually like sends out a laser grid. So that's structured light sensor is that grid. So anything that comes within that laser grid, it maps as a human person. And that's the best thing about it. You have to debunk a lot of stuff with it, but I've had some great evidence, and sometimes that thing just doesn't do anything, which is awesome. Like the
Right.
least amount of activity on a device, the better, because that gives like the stuff that actually comes through more justification in my eyes. So especially if you can connect it. But the SLS, let's see, Spirit Box, of course. One thing that I've had for a little bit now, and I might retire soon, and it's kind of sad, but the Paranormal Puck is very
All right.
popular. But yeah, the Paranormal Puck too. Ghost Adventures use it, but after getting the Spirit Chat version 4, I feel like Paranormal Puck about maybe 1,000 words, if that. And
Yeah.
you have to connect it with your phone and like the Bluetooth and stuff like that. Had a lot of like disconnection problems and stuff like that. And those could be attributed to the paranormal. It could be attributed to just the gear messing up.
Sure.
Uh, but that one, I'm just like, I've gotten a lot of the same responses at multiple locations. And that kind of like throws you off too. You're like, there's probably not like, I don't know, just whatever word would come through, like, and it's not associated to this location. So it's like, it starts feeling like it's more just spitting out stuff, which it's done great in the past. Like when I went to Goatman's Bridge, it said it was a portal. It said it was a bridge, like a bridge came through the paranormal park. So that was great. But after getting the spirit chat that does 10,000 words and phrases, and like you said, no frills about it, just that, and it actually says the word out loud.
Yeah.
I love that you can actually like feel like you're like conversating with somebody. So the paranormal pod, I have the EMF detectors, always important for like little fluctuations and trying to even debunk those fluctuations as well. Debunking is, I don't know, it's so important in the moment, you know, like debunking your own evidence. But like, of course, like we were saying, it's kind of hard to debunk things like on TikTok. It's easy to see if it's fake,
Right.
but if it's like getting viral traction and it's like actually kind of intriguing and hard to like see where it was faked, it's like I'm not going to be like, oh, that's debunked, it was this, I could do that. It's like, no, just because I can do that doesn't mean it was the way it was done.
Right.
So
Right.
Just putting that out there.
Exactly.
And what else? Night vision cameras, which hopefully I was actually able to capture something on my night vision camera in my last investigation that I haven't been able to share. And I literally just found it, so I'd love to share it with y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we could definitely get to that in a little bit. But the
Sure.
night vision cameras, I try to have like a little bit of everything. Even the dowsing rods or the divining rods. So
Yeah.
a lot of people hate on those too, and I understand that hate. It's very easily like manipulated by the hand and like small hand movements. A lot of people don't even realize they're doing it. So there is that factor to it. Maybe they're not trying to fake these things, but they're just trying to communicate. And if their hand moves, their hand moves.
Well, there's a lot of
But
it. Yeah, the dowsing rod is such an interesting thing because something that people tend to forget, because dowsing rods and pendulums work the same way, and you know, in a lot of ways, even the Ouija board works this way. Without your energy, the conduit is not there. People
Yeah.
forget that, yeah, there is a component of you moving these things. There is a component, but it is also about answers that are coming through you. And so, you know, the discussion on the table is because I once saw someone try to debunk it by putting dowsing rods in a clamp and asking questions. I was
Yeah,
like, well, without the bioelectricity, without the human contact, the
exactly.
conduit, it's not going to work. That
Yeah.
and that's the truth of you know, water divining. If you're walking around and the water divining rod, you know, when you're looking for water, um, it doesn't work if it's a machine. The machine
Hmm.
doesn't have the same sensitivity. And it's like, well, that tells you something. That tells you that we're actually dealing with something that we innately know but can't access. You know, something buried inside our own ability to communicate, which is the same with the spirit box and with these devices. Is we're trying to train ourselves to be open and receptive, and these
Hmm.
tools are supposed to put our minds in the receptive pattern. and
Exactly.
um, and so I think that, yeah, when people want to go down the road of, oh, that doesn't work, oh, that doesn't work, it's like, well, keep in mind that there are elements at play that we don't understand, but it's safe
Yeah.
to assume that in all of these cases, because for instance, we do the Estes method a lot. Um,
Nice.
and Madison is incredibly gifted at it,
Oh,
more
nice.
more so
Thanks,
than
Chris.
just about anyone else. But it has to do with the person, because like I've been in ghost hunts where you hand a camera around and everybody takes a picture, but only one person's getting like weird things in there. And I
Yeah.
was like, so it's not the equipment. It's a combination of people and equipment.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to take that step, you know, when you're too reliant on the equipment, or you're too, you know, bent on how these things work, it's like, well, there is this unknown element, this huge unknown element, and it's our participation becomes the missing ingredient in a lot of this equipment working. So when you hear
Yeah.
people complaining about, oh, well, I've never heard anything on the spirit box, or I've never seen anything with that body or using that thing, it's like, it might be you.
Yep.
And,
Oh yeah.
and it's not a question of whether you want it or whether you're, it's sometimes it's some internalized deep mechanism within us that can bring about this kind of communication or block it. I've known
Yeah.
plenty of people who are just blockers, who'll just show up to a place and the place goes cold.
Yeah. And you gotta, like, I assume, and I feel like it's been confirmed, but it's like they feel your vibes coming in there. They know your
Mhm.
intentions, stuff like that. So it's like people are like, yeah, they never interact with me. It's like, yeah, because they might know that you don't even believe in them. So it's like, why
Mhm.
would they want to like try to prove their existence to somebody that's like got that wall up and it's like, nah, you're not.
Uh,
And but otherwise, if you meet the right spirit, they might want to mess with that kind of person. But that's a very particular spirit. And that's why
yeah,
it's like, yeah, you haven't found that spirit because you're not putting yourself in that position. But uh, when I was doing those paranormal tours at that haunted bar, we were dealing with every kind of person, like scientists,
Mhm.
um, uh, why can't I think of it? But just like people that are skeptic.
right.
And it was so cool to like actually end the night and ask them like, so what do you think now? And most of them were like, yeah, I still I haven't really changed my mind, but I know more about this now. It's like it opened their mind that much more. Happy about that. So but back to the dowsing rods,
Yeah,
I don't know, it's just that feeling when you like you're holding them and they're moving on their own. Like if I tried to cross them, like to make them do it and stay that way, I can't even do that on like me trying. But when you like feel them move on their own and then they stop and they're like perfectly crossed, and maybe they're not perfect, but they like you can feel them start and stop. So it's like
right.
that feeling when you're holding them and when it happens is like you can't even explain that to somebody until they actually like feel it for themselves. But um also the copper involved. So back to the bioenergy that we're emitting, that has to work with it. They can manipulate copper being an element. So otherwise they'd be made out of plastic or something by now. Like people
Right.
would be buying plastic little dowsing rods, but no, they're copper for a reason. So
That's actually a really good point. I've never heard someone make that point that they do make them copper for a
Yeah,
reason.
absolutely.
That's
mhm,
fascinating. But
mhm.
I feel you on the regard though of having guests who come on to investigations or your tour or whatever, who they want you to prove them wrong. But it's like I would tell people the exact same thing. I'm like, ghosts aren't on the payroll, my guy. Like I,
No,
I as much as I wish they were, if you're coming in here, like a lot of times, I was taking people into historic homes and I'm like, these spirits, this was their home. And if you're coming in here with the vibe of like, show yourself, where I'm putting all of this assertive, aggressive energy into this space, if you were walking into somebody's home and you did that, they wouldn't talk to you or,
exactly. Like who's
so
this person?
Right.
exactly. It's like,
Get out.
get
I
out.
let the ghosts be the sassy ones. Like they're the ones that have that reason because I'm coming in their area. So it's like if they want to get sassy with me, by all means, at least they're communicating with me. So that's how I
Exactly.
consider it. But like those people that are just blocked off to it, it's like, oh, you poor thing. Like I
I
feel like you're
know.
missing out.
You could be having so much more fun in life.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
now I am curious to ask you about the Goatman Bridge and your experience there because
Mhm.
we definitely want to go there
Oh
eventually.
yeah.
So, I know you said you got the words bridge and portal and stuff. What I guess I should ask is what were your expectations going into the investigation and how did it end up?
Ooh. That's interesting because there is a lot of lore there, so much lore, and a lot of it doesn't have that historical backup like a lot of like historical haunted places do. So it's kind of hard to tell, like, if you're like getting into some place that has like a goat man, like a man's body with a goat head and stuff like that, or if it's just like people hyping up the spot. Um, so that was kind of my like way of approaching it. It's like, okay, I want to find out, and from the spirits themselves, not me assuming, like whatever comes through, to try to find out like what is real about this spot, and try names that are popular there, because there's like, I think 3 names there that come through quite often, and this is very good for y'all to know. So it's like Steve comes through, Oscar has come through, and Oscar is the man that was killed there. So he was hung there because he was a black man in the wrong territory, pretty much, and uh, so it was. He was a goat herder. He was hung by the KKK, and then they went and murdered his family after that. They burned their house down and everything. Yeah, they were very spiteful. They like supposedly they hung him, and then they went and looked for his body to confirm that he was dead, and he was gone. And so they freaked out, and that's what led them to go to the house to try to find him, and then they just killed his family. Um, Very terrible, but it's like that story alone, there's no record of an Oscar Washburn. But, and there's always that but,
Right.
that could have not been his real name. That could have been just the name that was given to him from society, just him trying to be in society, being a black man. So it's crazy, that part of the history part, but then knowing how many people go there constantly. This is one of like the most like uh just popular haunted spots I think I've been to. Like, one thing that you guys will find out when you go, it's just a lot of people visiting. Kids even come out there all the time, families all the time. It's a really nice little trail out there, so a lot of people just come out there. And but there's also the people like us that are very interested, or the people that might have heard man there and they want to bring their Ouija board and not know anything that they're doing, and then opening doorways to actual goat type entities. So it's stuff like that where it's just like, what was here, what was brought here. But regardless, there is a lot there. And that's what I've come to find after I've been there twice now, once with my old team and once with Ghost Notes Paranormal. And I had similar experiences. It was pretty crazy. I know female energy is very susceptible there, supposedly. So it's you got to kind of keep an eye and just make sure that that female energy is protected, because they seem to go to that. But also, one of the main things that happened both times to me, and it scared the shit out of me both times. And sorry if I'm not supposed to swear,
You're good.
but it was my vision, like literally went blurry both times. Like I like could barely see. One was when I was the first time was when I was trying to leave the bridge and like kind of maybe get a new gadget, I think I was, but documented that. And then the second time was when I was underneath the bridge. So it was like both times felt the exact same, just really just disoriented too at the same time. And luckily, the second time I had a friend with me, and she also felt the same way at the exact same time. So just be careful. That's all I got to say. It seems to be something very strong there. And I'm glad you guys are going to go there. So I want to see what you guys can get with the spirit chat, because I don't know if I'll ever go back there. I kind of told myself I was done after the second time. But there was this area that is claimed to be where the house was out there. But it's a concrete slab. So given the time, I don't know if they would have used a concrete slab for his home back in the day like that. But there's this concrete slab in the woods, and somebody's pretty much made it a giant Ouija board. They pretty much drew all the things that you need. The yes in the corner, the no in the corner. So that was there, and I had no clue until after that last time. So you guys should check that spot out. but yeah, that's what you're like, that's the type of
Wow.
people that are going there and opening doorways and probably not closing them. But
Yeah. One of the big problems with especially stories of that nature is the people in charge of local history are not going to write down a lot of this.
Right.
There's a
mhm,
lot of things
true.
that they inherently know they don't want a record of.
Mhm.
And they do have the ability to erase things. There is a place outside of Hinesville, Georgia, when I was in high school, we used to go out to, and it was called the Mounds. And the
Oh,
mounds, they've said, were where they buried all the belongings of the black people that they had either run off or killed.
wow.
And they so
Mm.
it's this very awkward, like strange topography in a clearing in the woods. And it's very unnerving. Being there is very unnerving. As a matter of fact, me and my friends were out there one night, and my friend got hit by a flying vertebrae, like
What?
a deer's spine came out of the woods and hit him. And we could never figure
What?
out how it was thrown. It was still bloody. We never saw anybody anywhere near us, but that was enough to be like, well, this is the last time we come out to the mounds. But one of those interesting things was there was a slab out there, and it was like, oh, was there a house here? And my friend, who was, you know, steeped in local lore, he's like, oh no, when they bury bodies, they'll put a concrete slab down so the bodies don't come out of the ground.
Mm.
When they know that
Um,
there's when they know there's bodies, they'll put down a big concrete slab because they don't know exactly where the bodies are, but they'll put
yeah.
down this big slab so that when the rain comes, because they weren't properly buried, you know,
Wow.
they're hastily buried and they don't want those bodies to come back up. So they'll put out. So I'm wondering if that's not what was out there, you
Yeah. And
know.
it didn't look big enough to be a house, like for a house.
Exactly.
Sure.
So
That's
that's what I was
exactly it.
like,
It's not like a house-sized foundation. It's
yeah.
just like a slab, like you might park a car on it or something.
And that would make sense, especially if it was historically known that his house might have been there, because there's the Goatman's Bridge, and then there's like a road that is built by it now that because they don't use the bridge anymore, of course.
Right, right.
So the road that goes between the bridge and supposedly the house is on the other side of the road. So if you guys see that, let me know because
Okay,
like
Yeah.
we will.
I'm surprised I didn't know about that until I left. I'm like, no, that would have been cool to like see if anything spiked out there or something. But I don't know. Those woods are definitely haunted, and that's all I can say. Like, I want you guys to be there, but also I'm just like, just be safe. Of course, I know you guys will be, but I feel like I have to say those kind of things.
That's fair.
It's
Well,
definitely
yeah.
an interesting spot. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have encounters with things that feel very intense, it makes sense to want to warn people.
right.
When we did the Conjuring house, everybody I've talked to since then, I'm like, just so you know, we did see a skinwalker. So just like be aware that
Yeah.
they are there.
We actually heard
Um,
native drums too. Very,
really,
very clearly three sound beats on a native drum. And it was just like, oh,
wow,
okay, all right.
that's
Um,
amazing.
and
it was
yeah,
insane.
there's a lot of strangeness to be said. And it's always interesting when you're in a place that is famous for a specific type of haunting when you uncover something that isn't usually discussed. Because where there
Mm,
is high paranormal activity, that means that the environment is amenable to paranormal entities. And so it's not going to be exclusive. You know,
right.
it's like a watering hole. And
Hmm.
if the spirits that are there can present themselves, that means spirits that are nearby could be drawn to it and
Yeah.
can because there's a lot of misplaced ghosts, a lot of homeless ghosts. You know, you're not
Yeah.
always going to meet, you know, the person who was murdered in the house or the, you know, the owner of this land. Sometimes it's somebody who was like in Ohio, hitched a ride on somebody's back and found a place where they can survive, you know, where the energy is
Hmm.
just right enough that they can, you know, that's one of my theories of Savannah's many hauntings is they're not all Savannah ghosts. There are ghosts that, you know, latch on to people because I think people are more likely to be haunted than houses any day. but
Yeah.
you get to a place where the energy is so free and so freely available to the spirit that the spirit's like, I don't have to leech off of this living person. I can just be in this environment where I can
Hmm.
now, sort of roam free. But I think then you start dealing with the onset of early malicious behavior, because now the spirits don't have anything to do. They have enough energy and they can start to really mess with you. They can just, they want that interaction to be more interactive. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to scare people or to alarm them or to cause that kind of panic.
Hmm. Wow, I like that theory because that actually kind of helps with this place I investigated a couple of months ago. The whole thing was the house was moved from downtown Austin to the new location that it's at now, but sometime in that move, it got haunted.
Sure.
So it's like that might be because a lot of people were saying that it's like maybe it's the land that it was put on, but maybe it was both. Maybe it was just that perfect storm where it was just like the house had the perfect, like already spirits, but they were happy. But then
Right.
having the spirits trapped in this vessel and you're moving it, and it is also haunted with totally different spirits or different energy. It
Yeah.
might not even be spirits, but that alone could have triggered the spirits to turn to be angry. Uh, but yeah, that's I like that. That makes sense because I mean the land carries energy just as much as you know a building, and then humans definitely because we're conduits. We just have the energy that they're familiar with, that they want to use, or they might just see you as somebody they knew in their past life, even. So it's like your looks alone could be that triggering effect that they would attach to. So
Yeah.
I've actually had that happen with an old uh, teammate that she got an attachment from going to a cemetery, and the man that she like attached to her, she resembled his love in his life.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, it was almost sad because it's like you feel bad for him, but we were like arguing and stuff. Like you could tell the difference between her personality when she wasn't under and when she was being affected by it. We had to get psychics involved and practitioners, um,
Wow.
chalk and bones involved.
And that's
But
also
yeah.
something we should bring up because we don't talk about it a lot. Although, like the first ghost story I told on this podcast was about my sister who had an attachment from a cemetery. Um, Cemetery ghosts are strong linger-oners, but they don't have, they're where their body is and they're where their stone is. And sometimes people can come by and remind them so much of the life they used to have that they follow. So
Hmm.
you can easily get a hitchhiker from a cemetery, walking through a cemetery. And I know we're all creepy people. We love going to cemeteries. It's all good and fun. But the truth of the matter is, when those spirits are there, they long for their life. And we're so full of life. And when
Yeah.
we come through, if there's anything about us that resonates with the life they led, they will try to, follow it. They want it back.
Hmm.
The reason they haven't moved on is not because of a lot of trauma and long lost stuff. It's the inability to imagine another existence.
Mm.
Right.
And when you show up, and I often wondered if the woman who followed my sister when my sister was like 3 years old, this woman didn't see her own child, see like a small girl and think my child, and
Yeah.
become so attached to that, notion of that young life and the love that they once had and all these things. So, um, we often go on and say that ghosts, when they become very singular about what they're about, it will appear evil, even if it's
Hmm.
love, even if they are
Yeah.
being loving. They're disregarding all the other things that make us whole, and they become very driven on that single principle, and it can, do damage and can be damaging because they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about
And
anything but the one thing.
you
And
know,
so they will cause damage. Yeah, and people will get that altered sensation. They'll get very sensitive and moody and all these things. And it's like, well, it's not because the ghost is evil and trying to be evil. It's because the ghost is zapping them and taking from them
you
what
know,
they think is life. And
hmm
from our end, it's just like we're diminishing our daily energy.
yeah, and being exhausted, and you get
Mhm.
grumpy, it's like, of course, those like fluctuations would, make things more tense or somebody more irritable or something. So the ending of like how it happened, like to just like prove that it actually was actually happening, because it was kind of up in the air still with me. Like this was the very beginning when I first started investigating that she got the attachment. So I was still kind of skeptic, but when it like we met up with the psychic and the practitioner, that's when everything started getting more real. And then they whip out, like doing the actual practice that they were doing to try to get the attachment off. That became more real. And I've been told by a friend psychic that I have a spirit, like an ancestor kind of watching over me. And that was actually asked during that session. She was like, kind of asking about herself. She's like, okay, so I had that attachment. Is he okay? And, referring to me. And the psychic just looked at me and she's like, oh, he's fine. Like, I was like, oh, cool. Like my ancestors, thank you. um, so, but it was like, the psychic found out that he or she was his love and he attached to her because of that, and he was, like you were saying, probably on that idea. Um and it was really beautiful. Actually, she went into, I don't know what it would be called, the ether or whatever, and found her he found she found that old man's wife's spirit in the afterlife. And she made a deal with the attachment spirit and was like, if you unattach from her and you move on, I'll connect you with this your love of your life, but you have to go pretty much to like a spirit school and learn how to be better and learn how to like be yourself again, almost pretty much. Like you were saying, he was probably yearning for that life feeling to be alive again. And so when she made that deal with him, he actually accepted that, and she
Wow.
connected them in the past life, and he went off to learn more about how to be a more positive energy. And that was awesome. And you could just feel the whole energy in the room just lift. And it just like everybody was like giggly, and it just felt so much better. And I remember leaving there and we're just like so happy that it just felt like normal. And again, that's when everything got really real to me. And that's when everything's just like, okay. They also commented, they're like, if you're not going to take this seriously, if these investigations that you are doing, you're not doing them properly, if you're going to keep on doing it like this, stop now. No, no, like option. They were just like, stop. And I was just like, I want to do this so bad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to stop, but I was scared. So I was just like, okay, well, now's the time to like take it seriously, open these sessions properly, close the sessions properly, be respectful. Don't push the envelope and try to be like Zach Bagans. He does what he does, and I respect that. Like somebody's got to do it, I guess. And I'm glad I'm not the person to provoke these spirits. But I would never suggest anybody speaking of spirits like that. Just you get more honey with sweetness, so or more bees with honey. So
Right.
it's like I've always worked a lot better just respecting whether they hate me, whether they don't like me. I'm still just going to be respectful. So,
Totally.
No, that's the bottom line. And there's a lot to be said about um, how into the public eye paranormal investigating had become, thanks to um, the TV shows and thanks to all of these things. But the sensationalized version of ghost hunting has caused, I think, a generation of misconceived paranormal investigators, simply because they're looking for a type of interaction that is generally not what you want. Generally not what you're looking, but hopefully you're not what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And you generally have to learn the hard way that you don't want it. It's not until you have a negative attachment. It's not until, you find yourself sick in bed going, what happened to me? What's going on? That you realize, oh, I haven't been paying close enough attention. I haven't been, taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And that's, the danger of that is that we are highly susceptible to even the slightest influence of the spiritual world,
Yeah.
but we'll never admit to it.
Fair enough.
We're like, no, we're physical beings, and this is a physical malady. I feel the physical illness. And it's like, but it was a spiritual thing that happened to you.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with it spiritually. It's like, no, I'm just going to, hydrate and get that vitamin C and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
It might help a little bit, maybe.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, it can't hurt to take care of yourself physically.
God. Yeah. And I mean, it's so true. Like, I mean, they even say, people like that are under the influence of alcohol can be more susceptible to spirits because they're just vulnerable. Like you're just, your guard's down, you're drunk. And I've seen that on TikTok too. And a lot of people were hating on that. I don't even remember what the creator's name was, but he constantly seemed like he was drunk. But then anytime he was drunk, he was capturing these, like, there's like the knife flying out of the knife holder and stuff like that.
Yes.
That one was super popular, or like went viral. But that guy, I was just like, this one's hard, because I understand it could be strings, it could be that, but it's like there is a side of the spiritual world where if it is a bad entity, they get attached to something like that. And I don't know, it just seemed pretty. So I hope he's doing right.
Right.
I haven't seen anything.
We hope you're doing okay.
Yeah. But before we get too far along, I did want to touch upon, because you mentioned that you're working on this documentary. Can you tell us a little bit about this process? Because you were basically given access to a building that is slated for destruction, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so they basically said, you can come in whenever you want and poke the ghost right in the face.
Yep.
And so you're making a documentary.
Yep.
About your experiences. So can you just run us through that?
Yeah, totally. That house that I investigated that I mentioned was moved from downtown to its new spot, is a coffee shop now. And I was lucky enough to get in there. I got the owner's approval to investigate there, but there was art all over. And the artists that had their art up, it was like an agency, and they noticed the video. They saw the video because I tagged the coffee shop and they work with the coffee shop. So she ended up reaching out to me, and she was like, hey, I have this art collective where it used to be like a rehab center / like hospice center. And since I've already investigated there now, I can say the name. I try to keep that more private whenever it's about to happen. But it's called Stonebriar, and it's here in Austin, literally catty corner from the coffee shop. Just started raining. Sorry.
That's okay.
Super hard. But like just knowing that was the history. And she was like, well, it's actually going to be torn down at the end of August. So the sooner the better. Like, it'd be great to have something, because I guess they had some other team come in there, spend like a night there, and then never follow up. Not sure what happened with that, but she asked me to come. So I was like, hell yeah, totally. So I came there, and it ended up being like a lot bigger than I thought. Like, I drove by this place all the time, but knowing it was like 2 levels, like 2 wings even. So it's like a C-shaped building. And so it's 2 levels and a basement. And so I meet up with her. She shows me around and tells me, a little bit about the history, but mostly about what they've experienced and what she's experienced as the owner of this place now. And it was just crazy. Like she believes, obviously, and so she reached out to me. But it seemed like a lot of the artists there believe as well and had experiences of their own. And I'm so glad they reached out to me because it's just like that the honor of just being able to have a situation like that to like kind of like make your own and just like try to make do justice to this location and anybody stayed there as like a patient and do justice to the artist as well. It's like that's a big project and I wasn't even sure if I could do it, but I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm down. But I ended up, reaching out to some friend investigators to come and help me. Had my buddy Grim Jim come from Las Vegas, and he's worked plenty within the media, so he knew how to like conduct interviews and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, dude, this is great. So it's going to have like a really like different kind of touch than anything that I've investigated before. So I'm like, yeah, let's make this more of a documentary, like find the history, anything we can about this place. And there still could be more. That's the thing. It's the main investigation is done and that will be compiled into the documentary, but like there's still the demolition I want to like document. But as for like what is there, and now that I've investigated there with Jim, it's just like everybody was saying the same thing. Like everybody was feeling like the certain side of the building was dark and nobody liked to go in there. Everybody, like they weren't in the same room when having these interviews. They were pretty much all saying the kind of same thing. And the amount of activity we got in those areas were just ridiculously like high. And I mean, we got activity throughout most of the building, but for some reason it was just that corner or like that side of the building. It was both levels even. So it wasn't just one level. It wasn't the bottom floor. It was both levels. So that was kind of cool to like match that up and like, okay, these people are having experiences here too. And then we actually got some like damn good evidence to like coordinate with that. And so like just making this more of a documentary, more of like a feature length kind of amount. Like when I do an episode, it's usually like 45 minutes and it's like two parts. So it's like 45 minutes intermission and then the second part. And this time I just want to make it one big documentary, an hour and 30 minutes if need be. But I feel like it's pretty much already there. I just need to wait for the demolition now. But it's crazy how it just naturally came from that last investigation. And now I'm here and it feels weird because I never thought like I would have the opportunity to have like a building like that. And I've always had like wanted to investigate a building like that on my bucket list. And then just to have like a building like that to myself, I'm like, oh my God, this is a dream. So since I am talking about it, I don't know if you guys have the photo I sent y'all.
Yes, I do.
Okay. But this was in that wing that I was talking about, he's feeling. This was on the lower level. And this room, we just kind of were like, okay, let's do a session here. It feels weird. That door, super creepy. But as you can see in the left corner, you can see all our gadgets on the floor. We were about to do a session.
Right.
And okay, so I'll jump from that. I'm going to do some time jumping here.
Yeah, go ahead. Right ahead.
Cinematic effect. So like that was happening. But when I get back home, Jim's back in Las Vegas and I do a live feed and I'm like moving files from the cameras to my computer. So I'm just like, talking to people and I'm like moving the files. And then I find a photo on the night vision camera that I had. And I didn't take any photos with the camera. It has the option to take still photos, but I don't remember taking one. Maybe it was on accident when I was switching through the options, to film or take photos. And that was the only photo on the camera. And the truth is, when we were doing that session down there, we both felt like somebody was in that doorway to the right. And when I looked at that photo on that live feed, my jaw dropped. Like I've
That's so
never,
creepy.
yeah, I've never captured a shadow figure. I've tried to debunk this, like maybe it was one of our shadows from a light, but
Wow.
if it was, we were pretty far away from that door, so our shadow would have been huge if the light was behind us. And another thing, the shadow itself, you you can see the shoulder just kind of cuts off with the door frame.
Right.
But if that was our shadow, the shadow would be on that door frame as well. But
That's
it's on the complete other side of the wall. Um, so that was just mind blowing. I was just like on my live feed, just being like, y'all, you have to see this. And nobody else has seen it. Literally, you guys are like one of the few
wow.
people that have seen this. It'll be in the documentary.
Oh,
And
that's
please feel
fantastic.
free to, if you want to use it in like an edit or whatever for this.
Yeah, for those people who
Totally
are just
awesome.
listening to us, um, uh, it's a photograph of what kind of looks like a rec room of sorts. And in the far back corner is a doorway, and in the doorway is an inscrutable dark spot.
Hmm.
And whenever I talk about shadow people, I oftentimes say, imagine being in the dark, not being able to see anything, but then seeing something darker than the dark you're
Yeah.
in.
Hmm.
That's the sensation of a shadow figure, is that it is darker than the darkness that occurs naturally.
Yeah.
And this certainly has that quality. It
Yes,
certainly
it does.
has that, oh, that kind of sticks out in this picture.
Yeah.
Um, very
And
intriguing,
you
very
can see the
interesting.
grain, like
Yeah.
like all one photo, not edited or anything. The timestamp is completely wrong, but that's about it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
Wow.
like I said, I've never captured anything like that. And it was the only photo on the camera. And that's when it kind of made me get goosebumps. And then I actually looked
Right.
at it and I was just like, oh my God.
And
So
also worth noting that artists are highly susceptible to paranormal activity.
mhm,
The act of creating art is, in a lot of ways, a paranormal event. You are conjuring imagery, you're putting it down. The actions of painting are very much like scrying, very much like
mm,
using a Ouija board, very much like dowsing rods. You are following these patterns of spiritual energy to create something physical. And in a lot of places where an artist is, there is an enhancement of paranormal activity. If you put a bunch of artists together in a building that already has some spiritual, you know, history to it, some supernatural history to it, I could see where the that creative energy that artists exhibit, use, and feed upon
yeah.
would become readily available to the spirits around. So it's very interesting.
It is. It's
And,
fascinating. And it's
and that was the
also,
kitchen as well, by the way. That was where the kitchen was.
wow. Yeah, it's fascinating because it's, especially because y'all had the gut feeling that something was
Mhm.
there. And I feel like that's the best ghost hunting tool
Mhm.
that you can have is your
Your
gut.
heebie-jeebie meter.
The heebie-jeebie meter.
I love that.
Exactly. So the fact that that was the only photo as well is very compelling and very interesting.
Something wanted to be seen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I still haven't even really watched every frame of that footage yet. And I mean, like I said, I was moving the files when I found it, which was just a couple days ago. And there is kind of like a shadow like towards like the frame on the right, but you can see it's the shadow is actually not a shadow, it's just the light coming from, I had another camera, it's that bright
Mhm.
light that's to the
Right.
right,
Sure.
and that's what's casting that shadow. It's not one of us. So there's kind of like an arched shadow kind of going towards the door, but that's not one of us. I've
Oh,
already
yeah.
tried to
That's
like make sure,
right.
but that was there's so many little things like you have to debunk and put yourself
Right.
back in that time that it could have happened. So it's like I can't wait to watch the footage because we had a laser grid on that doorway the entire time, and I still haven't found see if there's any movement on that laser grid. So
100%. That's awesome. Well,
And
we
like,
can't.
oh, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say we can't wait to see it. I mean, honestly, this is gonna
Yeah,
be
it's very
fantastic.
exciting.
But
The sessions alone were just incredible. And like I said, we used both the spirit chats. So we had the spirit chat version 3 and 4 going pretty much every session. So
that's awesome. That's great.
yeah, super awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Bert, for coming on to the show today and talking with
Cool.
us. You have really great stories, so honestly, we're going to probably have to bring you back for a
Oh,
second
absolutely.
episode.
Yeah,
'cause-
and someday we'll meet face to face.
I was gonna
Exactly.
say I definitely want to make that trip. So hopefully maybe that will be that time because I want to do it sooner or later. So
Yeah,
we'll keep in
Sure.
touch
Absolutely.
for sure.
That's awesome.
Please do.
Well, thank you so much again. And to
You.
everybody listening, I hope y'all enjoyed today's episode. Bert, where can they find you on social media if they want to hear some more of your stories?
So pretty much Ghost Notes Paranormal all across the board, Patreon, YouTube, Instagram. And I don't know how that name was still available when I got it, but I was just like, I mean, just a little last factoid. That's a drumming term, and I'm a drummer. So Ghost Notes, it kind of doubles. It's like, yeah, I'm taking my own ghostly notes,
Right.
but it is a drumming term, and I thought that was cool because I'm a drummer. So it's just, wow, this is the most perfect name, Jug. And it just wasn't taken, so I'm like, that's mine.
I love it. That's awesome.
There you go.
Well,
Yeah.
alrighty. Well, y'all, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.